Good morning, everybody, and good morning to the people who watch the recording later. My name is Allison Ayotte, and I'm here with Holli Stone from Campus Events and Conference Services, and I work in the Office of Learning Services. In our roles, Holli and I are regularly approached by students who have big ideas that they want to bring to life. So through our experiences working with students, we've learned a lot from our students and a lot about effective mentoring, and we wanted to share some of those tools with you today. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat or raise your hand. We'll also have time to address questions at the end of the presentation. Okay. Holli, is there anything you wanted to mention before we jump in?
No. Do you want me to do my introduction? And
Sure.
Okay. Yep. All right. Oh, good morning.
Oops.
Well, thank you for being here. Sorry. I have the older eyes, so my script is on my laptop. My name's Holli Stone, and I bring almost 27 years of experience in event planning and project management. Throughout my career, hold on here. Sorry about this. 1 second.
Well, while Holli is getting those things situated, I'll just chat a little bit about my experience. I've been at SUNY Oswego for almost 10 years now. The last few years I've been in the Office of Learning Services. And that's really when students started approaching me for help figuring out how to bring some of their big projects to life. So I'm going to be talking specifically about one of those in a few minutes after Holli introduces herself.
All right, I am back. Thank you. Again, Holli Stone. I bring almost 27 years of experience in event planning and project management. Throughout my career, I've learned that successful events and projects don't happen by accident. They happen through vision, structure, and communication, along with follow through. So one of the things that I really enjoy is helping bring an idea to life. So taking something that starts with a concept and guiding it through the approval process, identifying funding sources, building the right connections, and turning the idea into a well-organized, meaningful experience. One example is my mentor experience with TEDx SUNY Oswego. That experience wasn't just about coordinating an event. It was about helping people grow while producing something meaningful. I supported students and team members as they learned how to move from inspiration to execution, including project building, logistical planning, promotions, audience engagement, and event follow-up. Because the team included around 40 people, mentoring required both structure and flexibility. I believe it's important to understand individual strengths and place people where they can be successful. I also believe that developing leadership early, so succession planning is not an afterthought, is built into the process, should be built into the process from the beginning. For me, mentoring means helping people build skills, confidence, judgment, and ownership while working towards the meaningful outcome. In the TEDx SUNY Oswego experience, that meant creating regular meetings, feedback loops, clear expectations, opportunities for emerging leaders to step forward. It also meant helping team members understand not only what needed to be done, but why it mattered and how their contribution connected to the larger goal. My approach to mentoring is very goal-oriented. I focus on aligning processes with goals and outcomes while also making room for creativity, collaboration, and growth. I value clear communication, accountability, and connection. At the end of the day, I see mentoring, event planning, and project management is deeply connected. They're all about helping people come together around an idea, giving them the tools and structure to succeed, and creating an experience that has impact beyond the event itself. That's the perspective I bring to this mentoring workshop. So, back to Allison. I was going to say, I don't know.
Okay. So for today, we have a few things in mind for you. We're going to show you a tool from a set of strategies known as motivational interviewing. The tool is the confidence ruler, and you can use that to help figure out your students' strengths, and where they need some support. We're going to be helping you think about how you're currently serving those you are mentoring. Are you serving as a crutch and creating dependency, or are you building scaffolding and building agency within your mentees? And then we're actually going to give you some time to practice using the confidence ruler and designing the next step in a certain project that your mentee might need to take. But before we do that, we just wanted to get a sense from the people who are here. If you think about your previous experiences with mentorship, either you mentoring someone else, or perhaps you've had a really good mentor. What is something that a good mentor does? We'll give you a second to think about it. And if you have an idea you'd like to share, feel free to unmute. So I know, so Dan Wood is on the call, and Dan works with students in audio recording and production, which is a very hands-on field. So I bet Dan has some good mentorship experience.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm really interested for this, this presentation is how I can get better at helping, the students get through some of their especially the bigger projects like you were just saying, particularly capstones. I do a lot of mentoring for that. A big performance in Waterman or an internship or something like that. For me, I think I really try to make students understand, like, okay, you want to do this, and here are all the other parts that you might not have thought about that you're going to have to, consider and address, or it's not going to go the way are hoping. So yeah, for mentoring, I guess I try to um, just bring up things that I know that they're going to be having to deal with that they might not have thought about. Or maybe, just give them ideas. Hey, have you ever thought of possibly going in this direction? You're a strong performer, maybe live sound. I know you're really good in the studio. Just I try to put different ideas in their mind that they might not have thought about before.
Awesome, thank you for sharing that. So some of the things that you're bringing up, we're going to be referring to those things that they maybe didn't realize as part of the hidden curriculum, that we as faculty and staff know how the institution works, know who has different roles on campus that can help bring an idea to life. So I think we're going to be able to work on some of those things today that you mentioned. Anyone else? If you've ever had a really good mentor, what is something that they did? Or what is something that you do?
Yeah, Liz, is there anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Dan brought up some really good points. I also think like a huge task, so I'm in biology, so like we do like research papers or research presentations or it's a research project. And so like I think a huge task can seem really daunting. So I do try to break it into like goalposts, right? Although I definitely could do a better job at that. And then I think, uh trying to also like push them to maybe expand a little bit on their horizons, a little outside their comfort zone, while also encouraging them that they can definitely achieve these things that seem really difficult, right? Yeah. So I think those are my two things.
Excellent.
Awesome. All right, so we will jump in and get to work. Okay. So as Dan mentioned, there's a lot of pieces to how things work, and students aren't always aware of all those things. And that's where mentors can help with institutional literacy. So all the unspoken processes, procedures, policies, rules that have to be followed, approvals that have to be secured in advance, knowing that it can take a long time to get some of those approvals. Also the social capital. So there are different people on campus who can help students make certain things happen based on the positions that they have. So we can help get those students connected to key stakeholders and campus partners, doing a warm handoff perhaps. And also, as Dan mentioned, there's some really large scale projects we do, like TEDx, big performances, that need to be chopped into smaller, manageable pieces to help students make incremental progress and not get overwhelmed. Okay, so one of the projects that a student approached me about, the student was a tutor and academic coach working for us in the Office of Learning Services. They were a veteran tutor, very skilled, very professional at tutoring. And in their senior year, they had this big idea that they wanted to put on a Skillshare workshop series targeted specifically for neurodivergent students, meant as a peer support. So neurodivergent students would be in community together, supporting each other with strategies that work for them to help them be successful. So in talking with the student, they had the passion, they had the content, the meat of what they wanted to do. And they were already connected with us in the Office of Learning Services, so we had a place to start. But they wanted this to survive beyond their graduation. And they also wanted it to stay in the hands of the students and to stay true to the mission of having it be peer-led. So neurodivergent students supporting other neurodivergent students. We spent that year of our mentorship relationship exploring different sustainability pathways that this initiative could move to after they graduated. That is where I helped the student with the social capital. They knew about accessibility resources, but there were some other relevant people on campus who could help them think about, okay, this is about accessibility, this is about diversity and inclusion. What are some ways we could help this remain there after the student graduates? So they really didn't need my help, with the content, but throughout the year, we introduced them to key stakeholders so that they could make an informed decision about where to house this once they graduated. And they made the decision based on their values and their philosophy for the program to move it under the student organization that was recently formed, the Disability Association, so it could remain within student control and have all the privileges that student groups have. Great. And
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about TEDx. It really was a campus event that had massive logistical challenges, and instead of taking over the entire operation, I worked with the students to identify what some of the gaps were. So we talked about looking at the succession plan. That was an important piece. We talked about making connections with faculty and staff. A lot of it was through open-ended questions. So I really wanted to align the program with what their goals were for it. So TEDx came with a lot of rules and regulations that come through the TED program, the YouTube program. So it was really understanding that, understanding how they selected, who they selected to be on the committee and why they selected that person. So it was mentoring through understanding. It was mentoring through realizing what their big picture was. It was looking at, realistically, what did we have for funding? What did we have for time-wise? What was our timeline? So understanding all of those pieces and how they came together. Through that mentorship, we were able to carry out a lot of execution. There was a lot of regular meetings, very long meetings in the beginning. The second year through, we were able to restructure some of those meetings because we'd already been through the first time of TEDx. So we kind of had some of the basics down. So the second year of it, we were able to restructure that. But understanding, making sure that the students all knew their roles, they were all buying into the same goal of the process, that everybody was included in the decision making, everybody's information and creativity was considered as we executed what we were doing. So it was every single core position was paired with a student successor. We had shadows, and that ensured the operational longevity through the mentorship.
Thank you, Holly. Okay. Holly mentioned the regular meetings for that large scale event. And I also wanted to mention, that's something that I learned after my first mentorship project. The importance of having scheduled standing meetings with the mentee. So that, you can do proactive mentoring throughout the experience versus just reacting when there's a problem or responding when there's a problem. So, that's important for it's a good mentorship practice, just like it's a good supervisory practice. And so that's one of the things that I learned from experiences is making sure to give that student, in my case, one-on-one time. In Holly's case, she had larger meetings. Okay. One of the big tools we'd like to share with you today is called the confidence ruler. And this is a tool from motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is an evidence-based approach to helping people grow and change. It's used in healthcare and counseling to help people make lifestyle changes. It's also used in coaching when people have a specific goal they want to achieve. And so it can also be used in staff supervision and mentoring, especially when students have this big idea that they wanted to put into place. They need those action steps to get there. So one of the things we can do to get started and throughout the process is use the confidence ruler to find out how confident they are in being able to do this next step or to put the idea in motion. So we're going to try it out with you a couple times during this presentation. And the first thing we want you to think about is how confident are you in being able to be an effective mentor with the students that you work with on a scale of 1 to 10.
And 1 is least confident, 10
Yes.
is most confident.
Yes.
So, yes.
So think about that for a moment. How confident are you in your mentorship skills? And because you came here today and you wanted to learn something, my guess is it's not a 10. It's not a 10 for me either, because there's always something to learn. So thinking about your number, these follow-up questions are really where you're going to get the most important information. Okay, so let's say you chose a 6. Why did you choose a 6 and not a 5? Or let's say you chose an 8. Why did you choose an 8 and not a 7? Would anybody like to share? And if you need clarification, let me know what I'm asking.
I'll share since Dan went first last time. I guess I'll say a 7.
I had a 7 as well for me.
So that shows you have, relatively high confidence, but still some room to grow. So why 7 and not a 6?
Great question. I was waffling between a 7 and an 8. I I feel like my students complete projects and also move on to careers in the field. Um, so that pushes me higher. Uh, a 6 to me is like almost a 5, I guess. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it.
Okay, so you have experience helping students achieve their projects here, and they're also successful at gaining employment when they graduate. So there's definite success there. Dan, why are you a 7 and not a 6?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty confident, with the hidden curriculum and the social connections, this is who you have to see for this, I'm pretty confident. So I wanted to do a high, number, but at the same time, I do know that by going through these kinds of things many times, um, there's a lot of things I can do to improve to make it, a smoother process for everybody. I am definitely reactive. I feel like I'm always jumping in to help fix a problem. Something's on fire, let's put that out instead of, like you were saying, I need to be better with just regular meetings with them. And again, this kind of stuff does take a lot of time, and I know none of us have any extra time, but I'm going to need to make time to hopefully save me time. I make these meetings, and then I will have less fires to put out when, hey, this has to happen tomorrow, and it's not going to happen as it stands right now. So yeah, I think I have a bunch of things I can do to improve, and actually that's why I'm here. So far I've gotten a bunch of good ideas.
Great. And we are going to be talking about that time issue. You kind of like alluded to it by putting in the time up front, you're saving yourself time later. So by thinking about, why are we a 7 and not a 6? That uncovered some of your strengths already as a mentor, and you both bring a lot of experience, and you've learned from your experience. Dan, you started talking about the things you still want to learn, and that brings us to our next question. What gets you from a 7 to an 8? What would you need to get from a 7 to an 8? Yeah.
An overall smoother, operation, I would say, over the course of these. I'm thinking like capstones at this point. If there could be just, I put in some things earlier and it makes it smoother and better overall, that would definitely make my confidence go up for sure.
Dan brought up the timing issue, which I also struggle with. I also struggle a bit with like quantity versus quality. So I have a lot of students who want to work with me, and I have a hard time saying like no. But then I worry that my students who are already in the lab are like suffering, right? And so it all comes back to the limited time piece, right? And I think finding that sweet spot of students is something that I'm still working on, as well as making sure that I'm like on top of all their projects. So I do meet with them weekly, either one-on-one or like in a bigger lab group or both. But I think I could do a better job of like taking notes and remembering in between the meetings. Not that I'd completely forget what's going on, but thinking more deeply about the problem. So again, as Dan said, it's less of like a fire situation, although with research, I don't think it's the same as like you're going on stage, but there are some fire situations for sure.
Deadlines for both, for sure. So both of you have just identified where you want to grow. And you've let us know some ways that we can offer support today to help you get there. So we are going to move on and do that.
All right. So we are going to talk about the crutch test. Hold on here. I'm getting to my information. And some of it is really, I'm going to talk about the hidden curriculum a little bit, Dan, because you touched on it. So I'm going to go over it a little bit more. But one of the most important parts is recognizing that it's everything students are expected to know, but it's not always directly taught. And I think that's where the time piece comes in for everybody. It's really understanding what that is. And it may be, how to navigate an institution, who to ask for help, where to find those resources, how to build connections, how to move through the system. So those are kind of your basics of your hidden curriculum. So understanding those basics helps lay the foundation for everything that's going to follow. And as mentors, it's really important to listen for that barrier behind the question. So to be asking those open-ended questions, to take the time, slow down, really understand what it is that the barrier is. Is it a knowledge barrier? Is it confidence? Is it access? Is it connection? Is it time? So, really understanding what it is that's causing that a little bit of disconnect. Sometimes it's institutional literacy. Sometimes the student just doesn't know how the system works. So trying to build that connection for them or with them. Sometimes it's social capital. They may not know who to contact or how to build that relationship. Sometimes it's a lack of an on-ramp. So they have the motivation and the idea, but they don't know how to take that first step. And so you're there as the person that's helping get them from point A to point B. And you're listening for which barrier is showing up, and you're responding in a way that builds the student's capacity without swooping in to solve the problem. And that's much easier said than done, especially when time is a big factor. So, that's building in succession. We want to talk a little bit about that, but we'll come back to that. Some examples, though. Really, I talk a lot about my daughter with the crutch test. So it's another tool I think that we can think about whether mentoring is actually building independence or if it's not, if it's creating dependency. So one question to ask yourself is, if I stop showing up, does the project stop moving? And Dan, how do you feel? How would you answer?
Yeah, I'm doing way too much crutching for sure. I'm not writing proposals, but certainly like making cold calls. I'd be like, all
Absolutely.
right, either I can just do this in, a minute, or I can, you know, have you do it, and it's going to take you like 4 days, you know?
Yeah.
And some of that is just our system here. It's like you were saying, they don't know you. If I need to book, Sheldon, I know I have to call Holly, and then so a lot of times I say, look, just get a hold of this person how many times have I said this? Before you lay your head down and go to sleep tonight, you must do this. When I see you tomorrow morning, I'm going to ask you, did you do this?
Uh-huh.
That's way too much crutching. I do lay it out, but I feel like I need to be a better, I feel like, you're a coach and you're coaching up your players for the game. I can't go out and play the game. They have to. The players are the people. And a lot of times I just need to like step back a little bit and say, look, I told you to do this, right? And you didn't. And now what? This is your problem to solve now, which is hard for me. I want our students to succeed, but I think sometimes they do create a little bit too much dependence.
Yep.
And,
And, is there a way that we could work together? So to help you in the mentoring. So maybe you have a group of them and you invite me in to talk to them and I can share with them, this is the process. So that takes it off
I'm taking
the
you up on
load.
that offer, Holly.
Still helps the students build that skill set.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the same with you. You talked about having the big groups and not really knowing, how to support everyone at once. How do you feel with the crutch test? If you stepped away, how do you feel the project would move forward?
I think many of my projects would be okay. The students are like largely independent taking data. I do have some where I'm more hands-on, like computer coding work. So I think that would fail the crutch test on that, or it would be crutching, not scaffolding. Yeah.
Okay, yep. And some of the examples, we talk about the crutch creates that dependency. So they're still dependent on you. They haven't learned to execute on their own, where the scaffolding creates the agency. And that's the difference between being the hero and an architect. You know, the hero is the one that's going to swoop in and fix it for them. It feels helpful in the moment, but it continues the dependency. Whereas the architect is building the structure so that everyone can move forward with confidence and independence. So you really want to get to the point where you're not the person that everyone depends on, because it's exhausting, right? It's time consuming and it's exhausting, and it doesn't really continue moving things forward. So the goal is to build the stairs so that others can do the climbing. We want them to be able to climb on their own. I'll give an example as a mom. I think about myself. When my daughter needed to get a credit card, we went to the bank and we were there for a solid hour. The teller was amazing. She let my daughter ask all sorts of questions. She was really great with answering them, but there was times that I really wanted to step in. I wanted to speed up the process, but what I realized is that I needed to let her ask the questions in her own way so that she could get the answers that she needed, not what I perceived she needed. And that was the big difference. A lot of times I'll perceive that the need is something that it's not. So understanding, really what is the need, not the perceived need. And by the end of the experience, I asked myself, if she needed to open a bank account, could she do it on her own? And it was yes. She would know where to go. She'd understand what kind of questions to ask and be able to move through the process. So I helped scaffold. Another example is the Common App. When she went through that, I didn't have the patience. This went to a time thing specifically. She went through every word and wanted everything defined. I ended up stepping in and really did the majority of it for her. And as a result, she didn't really learn the process, didn't understand what it was or why it mattered. So the next time around, I did it differently. I let her do the work, but what I did differently for myself is I made sure that there was enough time where I was available to answer her questions. But I was intentional about making sure that neither of us felt anxious or rushed in the moment, because I knew I needed that patience to let her experience the process for herself. If I didn't have the patience or the time, that I was going to step in because I was anxious, and that transferred onto her. So that's an important lesson for mentoring, is sometimes it's not the mentee isn't capable, it's whether we as mentors have created the conditions that allow them time to practice what they need to practice. So in your own classroom, workplace, or mentor setting, are there other areas that you guys have seen this happen that you want to share any experiences? And it can be positive. It can say, yep, this is where I've scaffolded, or we can talk about areas if you felt like you provided a crutch.
Yeah, sometimes it's not exactly us, it's the system we're working in that kind of, we have like room reservation. I just said, I know the rooms that Holly's in charge of. There's a process you go through. Some of our other areas that we use, the system really is almost impossible for a student to do it without a mentor's help. And by help, I mean me doing it. So yeah, I think at Oswego, I've noticed there's a lot of just systemness that is almost impossible for a student to navigate on their own. So, and in my own department, there are several things that are coming to mind that I really need to sit down with everybody and say, look, we need to get better at doing this. It's not just, me this is affecting, it's them as well. So I think we can do better with making those procedures a little smoother, so that we could just say, look, you just need to do this, and then they can go and do it without jumping over a tall building kind of thing.
So
Yeah.
maybe, sitting down and identifying what those barriers are,
Yeah.
campus wide, so that, because we all work with students in different capacities. So
Yeah.
understanding, here's a list of common barriers.
Yeah.
It's a really great approach to how to direct students or work with students to identify and navigate these barriers. And so
Yeah.
that's, common maybe amongst anyone that's mentoring or working with them. So that could be
Yeah.
something. Again, that's, time on your front end, but it's going to potentially save you time on the back end.
Yep.
Liz, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I think I could be a better scaffolder for like some of the more organizational things that the students could help, like fish feeding schedules, for example. I usually just like make one, but it does put a lot on, it takes a lot of time to kind of organize that, where I think the students could have some agency in those types of things. It also like made me think to like, I think whether you're providing agents or like crutching versus scaffolding too also kind of depends on like the task, right? The systematic issues that Dan was talking about, and also like the, you know, the maturity and stage of the student, right? I often find I'm providing a lot more crutching for more early career students, and then as they grow, they're getting more scaffolding, or students that are like earlier in the project, for example. Yeah, so it just made me think about like how it's a skill, I think, identifying like when you need to be more scaffoldy versus like maybe I need to be a little bit more of a crutch for this student in this particular time, leaning more towards scaffolding as they grow.
Yeah, so talk a little bit more about that. Why do you feel that you need to do more crutching for younger students than scaffolding?
I mean, I guess I was thinking more crutching as like, you know, the training process, right? You know, training them in like the research objectives, and then, you know, after a few weeks, usually they're ready to like be scaffolded. I don't know if that fits into this framework, but that's what that made me think of, right? Yeah,
I'm looking at Allison because I'm hearing more scaffolding in that, but I'm going to confirm with Allison.
maybe that is scaffolding then.
Yeah, definitely. You both, you know, bring up good points that, yes, as an institution, we could do better, but that culture change takes time. And right now you have mentees that you're working with. So, you know, you can, you know, use your agency to think about, okay, what does it make sense for you to take care of as a faculty member or a staff person? Because we have, you know, some of these things are part of our jobs, to facilitate certain pieces of things for the students. So, you know, what makes sense for us to do, and then what is the next best step for them and their learning, that they could do. So we're gonna work on that right now. So we'd like you to think about perhaps a student that either you worked with last semester, or that maybe you're going to be continuing to work with next semester on a project, capstone, research, performance. So think about maybe a student that you are possibly, you know, doing some of the crutching or carrying for. Or let me back up a second, a student that you're working with, and ask yourself, are you serving as a crutch for that student, or are you doing some scaffolding, which Holly kind of already started this process with you. And then as you're thinking about conversations that you have had with that student, or, you know, thinking ahead to a future conversation, things that you might perceive might be the issues Holly was mentioning. Well, you know, what questions could you ask? What open-ended questions could you ask to get that information from them? And, you know, putting it on them to do the critical thinking, and see what they come up with. And then based on that, what might be a next possible next step that that student could take to make progress in the project and also learn transferable skills. So we're going to give you some time to like think to yourself about the answers to these questions. You can feel free to jot it down. And then we're going to debrief after you've had a couple minutes to think about this. I think you've kind of already done the audit step, whether you were serving as a crutch or not. So thinking about what does the student need to learn next, and how could we possibly help facilitate that as a mentor? And, since we're a very small group, when you're, done writing, if you're ready to share, feel free to unmute and, let us know what you came up with. And specifically, we're going to ask you to share, what's a takeaway for the +1 for the student? What will you do as a mentor to help them get to that +1 and their confidence level of being able to carry out the project?
All right, I think I'm ready, if I'm not interrupting Dan's thinking here.
But no, go right ahead. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I'm definitely a big crutch for my student who's doing some like statistical coding, computer coding. We're using 2 different languages, so and it's a project that like I largely have done with a different behavior, so I have a lot of like the code already. And so we sit and we like code together, so I help her work through problems and such. But I think as she's gained more skills, she definitely could use more agency. So I think the first thing I'm going to ask her is to do that. I already forgot the name of it, but the number line confidence scaffoldy thing, that's not called scaffoldy, the confidence
Ruler.
ruler. Thank you, confidence ruler. And see where she's at. And then, I want to move the project forward. So I think maybe giving her a like a task to complete with limited guidance and show her how to like I've done a little bit of this, but more show her how to like Google the answers, because that's where you get a lot of the answers for coding work, kind of thing. But it is hard because it is something that I can probably solve in about 10 seconds, and it might take her hours to days to figure out, what that is. And that's just because I have more experience. It's like learning a different language. Yeah. But I think that's how I'm going to maybe provide her a challenge problem each week to still move the project forward, but develop her agency a bit more.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what I'm going through right now, and I do this every semester, every summer. I have a lot of interns that I'm a faculty sponsor for. Um, and the number is just going up and up. I have 11 of them this summer, which is, way more than I've ever had. Um, there's a process, and it's really well laid out. I have to say, experiential learning has their process absolutely laid out, written out every step of the way, but it's intensive in terms of, the number of steps and the things that not only the students have to do, but everyone involved has to do, the site supervisors and, the advisors. There's all kinds of approvals that have to happen. And it's stuff that does need to happen. None of it is like, oh, we really don't need to do this. Um, but it takes a lot to get through just the registration. And then once they're registered, there's other things that, the students are going to have to do and their site supervisor are going to have to do. Um, I spend a lot of time chasing people down for things that experiential learning needs in order for their approvals, or even like something simple like a timesheet. Um, I tend to reach out on my own and contact the site supervisors. We'll say, there's a timesheet that needs to be approved. And if they don't do it, they're not going to get their hours, they're not going to get it incomplete. It turns into a nightmare. Um, I need to, experiential learning has the process laid out, but I don't have the process laid out that I can just here are some of the things you're going to have to, um, address as you're doing your internship. I haven't written it out. I just kind of, again, react when there's a problem. So I need to write that out. I think that would be a really good first stare for them. So I can just refer them to something to say, look, here's the 10 things you're going to have to make sure, you see your site supervisor every day, at the internship. I don't. Um, if they haven't approved something, mention it to them. Hey, um, it's the end of the month and timesheets need to be approved. Experiential learning is going to be sending you those timesheets for approval instead of me doing it, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff I can do at internships that would make my life a lot easier and hopefully would, do more scaffolding for the students too.
Thank you, Dan. That kind of like leads us right into the next concept. So you're talking about things you've like learned over the years that you either verbally have to tell students, verbally have to follow up on. So you're talking about perhaps creating a resource, maybe even like a checklist that you can just give to the student. Once you get that done, it takes it off your plate, so you don't have to keep answering semester after semester after semester, all those emails and doing those follow-ups, if you put it in the hands of the student. So yes, it is going to take some time up front, but in the long term, it will save you time. So, and Holly talked about this too, like sometimes in the moment, we think, oh, it'll just be faster if I do it. And Liz, you mentioned that, but just, that is taking your own bandwidth, and you have your own job that you have to do. And it's also, preventing the student from that learning opportunity. So sometimes we need to kind of be mindful of, okay, am I like in the right place to have this conversation with the student? Am I going to be patient enough at that time? If not, it might be the time of day when you're meeting with the student. If it's the end of the day when you've been teaching all day, that might not be the time to have the mentorship conversation. I know for me, I do like my best thinking in the morning. So, that's something that we have agency over as well, is where are we going to put these mentorship meetings? So, all right. Let's see. Any questions on this concept? I think you both alluded to it early in the presentation.
Yeah.
And we have a resource we're going to share with you after, so you can take all these ideas with you. All right. So our students are amazing. Our students come to us with these great ideas that are worth preserving after they graduate. And we are part of the process for helping them, make that a lasting legacy from the idea to building the stairs based on the hidden curriculum and supporting them. In Holly's case, with the large scale events, there's a person in the position, in the role, but then there's another student who's shadowing them so they can take over the next year. Succession plan is definitely key to success of those large scale events. So when we do those things, it can become sustainable. The students can take ownership, they're learning, and you're not burning yourself out. Win-win.
All right. So as we're going through the process, one of the biggest pieces is the succession planning and making sure that's successful. So, Dan, I hear you talk about, every year with the interns. So maybe your process and your succession planning is looking at identifying one intern who actually is a mentor to the intern. So they're your mentor, and then you teach them to mentor the interns. And so they actually take responsibility for creating that checklist because they've gone through it, they've experienced it. So you're elevating them to lead mentor or something to that effect. So they're helping you. You're only mentoring one person, but that same skill set and knowledge is being passed down through all the others. And Liz, the same concept for you. So maybe you've identified one or two people that you really work directly with, and they facilitate that mentoring with the rest. So you're passing on what you have, and you're also giving them that same experience that they can take with them. So We always say that it doesn't happen at the end of the project. It really should be start at the starting point, built in early to the project, to the whole process. And what we need is we need to talk about the transition timeline. People need to understand when the responsibilities will shift. So, as your interns leave, what does that mean for them? As your research students move on, what does that mean for them? What does that mean for you? That transfer of knowledge, it's so important that it doesn't just stay with you, either one of you. You want to pass it on to the interns and to the research students. So passing on that knowledge, and then what do they do with it after you've passed it on to them? So it doesn't just stop with them. You want them to continue sharing that as well. Documentation, Dan, you alluded to writing down, right? Having that checklist. And Liz, you said, having them Google things on their own. So documenting, the process of, here's some great Google sites that will get you what you need. But having that written format that can be shared consistently across all. The feedback is such an important piece. Things change year to year. So even though the process or the outcome may be the same, the process could change, or the supervision could change. Policies, procedures could change. So getting feedback so that you can reflect, that reflection piece, looking back, saying what worked really well, what was frustrating, what didn't work, where were the points that really, really made a difference, and how do we continue that? Where did we need to improve, and how do we adjust and adapt? Making sure you have that mentor pipeline, so future leaders are identified and supported before there's that vacancy. So again, having that shadow position available so that you've got somebody that's able to step in, and they're learning. So you're giving, the person you're mentoring, you're giving them the experience to not only be the mentee, but they're also the mentor as they're shadowing somebody new. So they're getting that dual role. And making sure that you're finding the value and the right fit, so people are working from their strengths. So that's where those open-ended questions, understanding really what is it that they want to do, where's their areas of strength, and how do we place them in a place that they're really going to thrive, not just survive. We want them to be able to thrive. Recognition of experiential learning and transferable skills, such an important piece. So as they're going out into the world, you don't want them to just say, hey, I finished my capstone, or I did this research. You really want them to understand the why behind it, right? So they want to know what they're gaining beyond that immediate task, and you're offering so much as mentors. So, understanding that they didn't just get answers to questions, that they got so much more from both of you, or anyone that's doing mentoring. And then finally, learning assessment from both the mentor and the mentee. It shouldn't just be, what did they learn? It should be, what did I learn as a mentor, and how can I improve my structure next time around? So again, having those conversations, that reflection time.
And speaking of which, we would really love to continue the conversation with you. We have to wrap up this session because there's another session starting at 10. But we've started a lot of great conversations today, and we're going to be sharing with you a handout that has our strategies, and also a quick Google form to kind of get your feedback. But we all have great strategies to share with each other, and we're willing to keep chatting if you're interested. So
yes.
Are there any final questions?
No, this has been great. Thank you both. These are things that I think I can do pretty easily and make it a lot better quickly. So yeah, it's really good. Thank you both.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your participation.
Yes, thank you for being here today. We appreciate it.
See you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Kate will be back in just a minute.
Yep, no problem.